Chapter 4. Jason and Sara. Jason went home to get changed, maybe have a wash and a bite to eat, but more importantly for him, to get some powder. He scored it off his landlady, Sara. Not that she was a dealer, but her boyfriend was, and it was easier for Jason to deal with her, because apparently the Moroccan didn't think much of Jason. I hadn't met either Sara or Amin, but I had a hunch the problem between the two men was Jason living under the same roof as Amin's girlfriend. It's a bit complicated, because from what I gathered, Amin didn't want to commit to Sara, but didn't want to let her go either. She wanted to be with Amin, but was reaching the point of accepting that marriage was a long way off, and that maybe she just had to wait until he was ready. Jason said she liked having a man around the house, but made it clear there wasn't anything naughty going on between him and Sara. Sara was an attractive black woman in her early 30s, sexy, but with a touch of class about her. She wore designer clothes, with hair and nails done to perfection. Not that Jason had told me this, and we hadn't met at this point. I had to wait until we met for the first time to see how gorgeous she was. If Amin was as dangerous as Jason hints he is, then not cracking onto his bird would be a smart thing to do, which may be explained why Jason was always out of the apartment, getting drunk or high, anything but putting himself in the line of fire. "So, did you see your man earlier?" asked the tenant. "I did," replied Sara, not bothering to look up from a magazine. "Your bits are above the microwave in the brown cup. I'm going to take an extra one from mate, okay?" "No problem, just leave the money in the cup," she said. Jason went to the kitchen, grabbed the brown cup and fished out 3 bags of cocaine, each containing around the gram of the Class A drug. I say around the gram, as unless you check each bag you buy, you never really know how much is there. Also, if you do check every bag you buy, you know that you never actually get a full gram. He counted out €180, folded it up, then put it into the cup and placed it back on the shelf it came from. Jason checked his hair in the mirror and put his sunglasses on, then made his way back to the front room. He stood at the door, not saying a word, just watching Sara read her magazine. She must have felt his gaze drilling into her and looked up at him. "What is it?" she asked. "Oh, did you have any news for me about that other thing?" "No, not yet. I told you it'd probably be a few more weeks." "Okay, cool. And, well, I just wondered how you were doing, is everything all right?" Jason inquired. "I heard you arguing again on the phone last night. Just worried about you, that's all." Sara closed the magazine. "Yes, Jason, everything is fine. Now, if you don't mind, I just want to relax a bit before I go to work, okay?" "Yeah, sure, that's cool," he said, hiding any pain from what was clearly a rejection. "But remember, don't work hard, work smart." He gave her his cheesy grin, winked and then left. Chapter 5. Prospects. Jason and I sat at a table on the terrace of an English bar, overlooking the port and the beautiful sea. There were others from work at the bar, but as usual, we chose to sit apart from the crowd. They were still wearing their suits and sporting Ray-Ban sunglasses and trying to outdo each other with tales of money made, women dated and professional positions held. By contrast, we were dressed down and slurring our words. We'd had a few beers quite rapidly and were both high as kites. "I knew you couldn't resist the powder," stated Jason smugly. Was I a victim of peer pressure? Maybe. Jason was certainly an enabler, although if he hadn't brought the cocaine from home, scoring some whilst out and about on Marbella wasn't difficult at all. If you couldn't get some from whichever bar you were in, maybe you'd have to venture to the bar next door, or, at a stretch, to the bar the other side of the street or a 2-minute walk around the block. Jason was loud when he spoke, more so after a beer and some of the other, so I tried to change the subject from anything illegal, for fear of being asked to leave what was actually a nice little boozer in a good location. "So what do you think of this place then, Jace?" I asked. "You've been here a while." "This place fucking rocks, mate," he answered enthusiastically. "I can't wait to get my new bar job, and some big money." New bar job, I thought. What's he talking about now? "What do you mean? Why have you just done 2 weeks of training if you're going to go for another job straight away?" "This bar doesn't get busy for another week or so," he said. "My landlady's going to help me get an interview with the boss there, so I've got to do this shit until it's sorted, keep her off my back." "Really?" I asked. "This was just about killing time for you?" "Jimbo, 1, being ordered around by them cunts, and 2, wearing a fucking suit." He counted off his 2 best reasons on his fingers. "This ain't for me, mate. If I was wearing this suit back in Melbourne, I'd be shot. Fucking rednecks would have a field day." When Jason spoke, it was crude, almost backward sounding, but he did usually have a good point, which he was never shy in sharing. Honestly, if he did decide to go into the property sales profession, it'd not be too bad if he toned down the language a bit, but it seems he's got other ideas. "Yeah, I see what you mean," I said, thoughtfully. "I guess it's almost army-like, with the shouting orders, the dress code." I'd just counted off on my fingers my best 2 reasons for agreeing with him. "Do you think it'll be as bad now that the training has finished?" I continued. Jason toked on a cigarette and took a gulp from his beer, shaking his head as he placed his glass back on the table and flicked ash on the floor. "It's going to get worse. You speak to half of the English or Irish working behind the bars out here, they've all done it. Tell me, Jimbo, why are you here? He asked. This wasn't the first time he'd asked me a serious question. Cocaine does that to people. Makes you get all soppy, even if just for a minute or two. And you feel like an agony aunt for someone and you want to help solve any problems that they may or may not have. Give them career advice, as Jason was about to do to me. The experience? The money? He continued. Well, I've never had a job where you can earn what you can earn here, so the money, I guess, I said, unconvincingly, even to myself. And you think you'll earn what they say, he said. That grin spread across his face. Even if you earned it, do you think you'll get everything they owe you? Oh, Jimbo. It was my turn to smoke. It was making me nervous. The fuck are you talking about? You'll get your basic, which ain't much, but commission? You'd better be prepared to wait, mate. Besides, how many of these firms have folded in the last couple of years? Nearly all of them, I'd say. You reckon? I said, realising at this point that anybody listening into our conversation could see that I was a fish out of water, a million miles from home and no clue what I was really doing here. I'm serious, Jimbo. Ask anyone, said the wise Australian. Plus, you're not protected by unions and shit like where you're from. I tell ya, there's only one way to make real money out here, and it's the same as every other country you've been to. I didn't have to ask what. I knew that as soon as he'd finished stubbing out that cigarette, then maybe taking another swig of beer, that he was going to share his magnificent knowledge with me, the information that was going to open my eyes and make everything become so clear to clueless little me. For the first time, after numerous occasions of being out in public with Jason, he glanced at the clientele around us and leant across the table in order to say something he didn't want everyone else to hear. Selling drugs, mate. Believe me, it's where the money is. On this coast especially. You want to know why? He asked. Everybody does it. Look around. Take a look around and see with your own eyes. Cokeheads, all of them. Even us, for fuck's sake. Everyone's on it. When you are high on drugs, it's like everyone is high on drugs. It's an assumption, a deluded reasoning brought to fruition due to the drugs that you yourself are high on. But at the same time, it is hard to say that people aren't high. It's incredibly easy to score cocaine in Marbella. Probably easier to get than marijuana even. The coke was certainly better than in England, and cheaper too. And there was a lot of money here, disposable income. Even if not in our profession, as Jason has just informed me. There was nice cars, nice boats, men dressed well with gorgeous women on their arms, eating in fine-looking restaurants and drinking in wine bars, smoking expensive cigars as well. You could easily picture these people living the high life, if you'll forgive the pun. So, how come we aren't serving up then, Jace? I asked, curiously. I will be. I got a plan. I'll get this bar job sussed, work out who runs what, then pow, I have the cokeheads queuing up to score. You wait and see. So, you're here for the money as well then, Jace? I am now, and getting high, drunk, and fucking chicks. I'll drink to that, I said. We both raised our glasses, and Jason downed the rest of his whilst I took a sip of mine. In all honesty, his revelations about the property industry had brought me down a bit. I'd have to ask about and see how much he had been saying was true. I'd kind of fallen hook, line and sinker with all the talk about earning big, selling glamorous properties and even helping strangers invest their hard-earned cash into feasible projects and becoming a little richer with the help of my newly found expertise. Had I just been missold a dream? You know what, he said. You English ain't too bad, are ya? Best race in the world, mate, I replied. Whatever you say, Jimbo, whatever you say. But I'll tell you something for nothing right now. What's that? Jason slammed his empty glass on the table and pointed a finger at me, holding it no more than 2 inches from my face. Sure fucking round. Back in a sec, I'm going for a piss. That was one sentence he didn't mind sharing with the rest of the bar. I finished my drink and sparked another cigarette. Cocaine made me smoke more than usual. Sometimes I'd go a day without a cigarette, but after a line it's like a switch has been flicked and I can't get enough nicotine into my system. Suddenly, Jason ran out of the toilet and back to the table. We gotta go, he said, as he shoved his cigarettes back into his pocket. What are you doing? I asked. Toilets, he said, gesturing with his head to the toilet door he had just run from. I looked to see an old man stumbling through the door, blood all over his England football shirt. I thought you said the English were all right, I said, making a joke at a most inappropriate time. I was looking at my cock, said Jason, shoving his phone and lighter into a pocket. You coming or not? I left a €20 note on a table to cover our bill and we left, jogging light-footedly along the promenade. Fucking hell, Jace, you can't behave yourself, I thought, and not for the first time. Chapter 6. The Boiler Room. It was a week into the boiler room that things started to fall apart for me and my real estate investment advisory career. We'd all been working hard on the telephones for 9 hours a day. Now some people might not think that sitting or standing by a desk for 9 hours is hard labour, but it sure as shit ain't easy. I've been rejected by quite a few women in my life, some that I've cared for, others less important, but the constant rejection received as the telemarketer pushes you to the limit. I'd been threatened, verbally abused, laughed at, had people just hang up the phone and even one guy who cried. Personally, I don't blame my potential clients. Our leads were regurgitated from exhibition shows that happened anywhere from a month to 5 years ago. There were notes on the files with times and dates from previous telemarketers who had tried and failed to book these investors on a viewing trip. Some of the notes were funny. Said to stop phoning as all the money had been lost in Vegas, so take her name off the list. Said can't talk now, call back when you've got a proper job. And my personal favourite, said to stop calling or would fucking shoot me. This last lead was dated just a week ago, so I made up a note, no answer, and put it onto the no booking pile. It was an awful exercise for everyone involved. Mr. MacArthur refused to accept that the leads were no good. His logic being that the contact details were given by an interested party at some point, and we would keep trying them until the interested party was in a position that needed our specialised services. Another argument was that the telemarketer just didn't build a good enough rapport with the future client, so it was always worth another attempt from a new telemarketer. I was working next to Jason, which kind of made the days bearable. Remember I said that Jason would make a good salesman? Well, maybe if he had actually given a shit. I assume his head wasn't really into it, and he was just biding his time until the bar job came through, as he was truly impolite to some of these people. Normally I'm not keen on rudeness to people that don't deserve it, but the stress of the job and the abuse I'd received from my own phone calls made it a little more acceptable when Jason flirted outrageously with the females and was downright rude to the men. Arguing with people wouldn't get you a booking, but it did build up your phone minutes, which were monitored by the office manager, Richard Robinson, or Robbo as he liked to be known. Me and Jason hadn't booked or sold a thing, by the way, like most of the guys in that office. This job was hard, slow and painful. I hated salesmen before, and now I hated them even more, regardless if I was one or not. Yes, sir, I appreciate that, but if you... Well, all I need is 5 minutes. Well, that's not a very nice thing to say, sir. I'm just doing my job and... You've hung up, I said into the phone, before turning my attention to Jason's latest business call. Who do you think you're talking to, buddy? No, you listen to me. No, fuck you, he said, before slamming down the receiver. At this point, we'd given up all attempts to remain professional and learned to laugh at our shortcomings at MacArthur Realty International. I don't think I'm getting the hang of this, said Jason. Tell me about it, I said. Well, at least you'd listen. Oi, called out Robbo. He strutted out of his glass-walled office at the end of the room, chest out and red-faced as he exhaled the smoke from his menthol cigarette. Hang up the phones and come here, he barked. All 80 of us telemarketers gathered at Robbo's end of the office, which happened to be where the only unlocked exit was, which we had worked out to be as so the prize prat that was Robbo could make sure nobody snuck outside for a cheeky cigarette, which only went to highlight another abuse of power from management in this shifty company. Only managers could smoke in the office, which was unfair in my opinion, and I don't need to tell you what Jason thought of it. What the fuck do you losers think you're doing? Useless bunch of inept totters, continued Robbo, being his usual charming self. How fucking hard is it to get people who want to buy property to come and have a fucking look? You want a Ferrari like mine? Then pull your fingers out. We are one of the last surviving property investment companies on this coast. Why? Because we push until we get results, so everyone is staying another hour. It was the next action that changed my future, an action that wasn't started by me. I just happened to have made friends with a crazy, outspoken Australian. Fucking stress head, said Jason, looking at me and gesturing his head to the boss. It didn't go unnoticed. What did you just say, shithead? Asked our fearless leader. Take it easy, Robbo. No one's booking because no one's answering the phone, explained Jason, quite reasonably I might add. What the fuck did you just say, little Australian cunt? You got something to say? How about you just walk out that fucking door? At this point, I had a decision to make. The problem is, with those split-second decisions, there's a good chance that the pressure of the situation doesn't help your mind compute, and even when you try to do the right thing, it doesn't work out as one would have hoped. Step in or stay out of it? That was the question. Steady on, Robbo. The football's on at home. People aren't interested in talking to us while the game's on, I said, in my most diplomatic voice. Shut your fucking mouth, Jimmy, you bald cunt, replied Robbo. I was stunned, speechless. I found his comment unfair. I shaved my head as I had thinning hair at this point. I wasn't bald exactly, just on the way. I don't mind saying that I was offended. Jason, on the other hand, found Robbo's comment extremely funny. What? I said, forcing out a word. You heard, continued Robbo. If you got a problem, there's the fucking door. I'd never been a fighter, but I wasn't a little boy anymore, and accepting this kind of abuse on the phone was bad enough, but face-to-face bullying wasn't something I was going to accept. Jason looked at me, and me at him. Then we gathered our belongings from our desks and walked towards the exit. Every single one of the other telemarketers stood still and in silence, afraid of losing their precious jobs, their gateway to financial security. Clearly they still believed the dream that they had been sold during those 2 weeks of training. Robbo couldn't shut his mouth as we made our way to the exit. Fucking cowards. This was a chance for you to build your futures. Make more money than you could ever fucking dream of. You blew it, you couple of fucking losers, he said, full of bravado in front of his remaining telephone slaves. I could hear Jason muttering to himself under his breath. As I opened the door, I turned to see Jason pick up a chair and move threateningly towards Robbo. I looked away and stepped outside, closing the door, being careful not to look through the window and see what happened. I was a little partial to alcohol and becoming slightly more dependent on cocaine, but I've never been a violent person. I didn't ask Jason if he hit Robbo with that chair, but one day he told me that he didn't. He stopped just before. He just wanted to scare him, show him that being the boss doesn't make you untouchable. I think Jason has issues with authority. Chapter 7. No job, no home. I sat on the curb by the road outside the office, head in hands and just a few feet from Robbo's prized possession, the red Ferrari. Jason came out and stood over by me. "What's up with you?" he asked, seemingly ignorant to the consequences of quitting a job. "What's up with me? We've just lost our jobs, Jace. I'll have to leave the apartment," I said, "which leaves me stranded in Spain without a pot to piss in." I sighed, a deep sigh, the kind of sigh that signals a sense of realisation, of defeat, of helplessness. I looked up to see Jason, chin cupped in his hand, thoughts whirling around his mad little mind. His eyes widened. He'd had an idea. I braced myself. "Don't worry about it. You're lucky I like you, Jimbo," he said. "We got a spare room at our place. It ain't much, but it's got to be better than sleeping on a beach." I didn't need long to think about the offer. "Are you sure, Jace? Is it good to move in tonight? I don't fancy they'll want me staying in the staff digs anymore." "Yeah, right," he continued, suddenly less convincing. "First things first, we'll have to pop into Sara's bar on the beachfront. We'll have to make sure she's all right with you staying. Should be cool, though." "All right, sound. Then I can start thinking about finding a new job." We walked away from the office, but not before Jason spat out some phlegm onto the bonnet of Robbo's car. Petty, I thought, but under the circumstances, acceptable. It wasn't far from Sara's bar, the office that we'd never have the pleasure of slaving away in again, right in the middle of town, in a good building in a good location, surrounded by restaurants, bars and close to the beach. I reasoned now that this was to keep up the facade of living that dream that we'd been promised. Money, glamour, power and all that other stuff you get with it, a bit like being on the set of one of those MTV videos. "Don't worry about it, dude," said Jason. "There's loads of bar work around these parts. You'll be earning by tomorrow night, easy." This caring, reassuring side of Jason made me nervous. It didn't suit him. It didn't come across as natural. I felt like the closer we got to Sara's bar, the less positive he was about her allowing me to stay in her home. And although Jason was highly volatile, dangerous if you caught him at the wrong moment, I know he saw me as a friend and that he didn't want to let me down or see me with no place to go. "Bar work ain't exactly my thing, Jace," I replied. "I'm meant to be here making something of myself, not pulling pints for pissed up holiday makers. I've told you before, Jimbo, if you get work in the right bar, you can earn hundreds a week just in tips easy, plus your basic. I mean it, man, it's sick." I could tell he was being honest here, or at least he really believed in what he was saying. But after hearing the bullshit that we'd heard over the last few weeks, my confidence in people and what they said on this coast had wavered enormously. I was completely sober and fully aware that at that moment in time, I was following a young, aggressive, drug-taking, beer-drinking Australian to his cocaine-handling landlady in hope of somewhere to sleep. These were the people I was relying on. I was nervous. "Yeah, we'll see. I'll take a look in the paper tomorrow. Maybe there's something else that'll suit, in an office or something," I said, optimistically. "Sure, cool, mate, but I don't reckon you'll find much better than working for those pricks back there. And I don't think much of your sales technique either, if I'm honest." "You're probably right, mate. You're probably right." Sara sat in a cosy little wine bar on the beachfront. Comfy sofas and candles gave the place a warm feel, definitely decorated with a woman's sensual touch. Adoringly, she admired the engagement ring on the hand of a female customer she was talking to. The woman's baby girl was sound asleep in a pram beside her. Well, to be honest, if the baby hadn't come along, who knows if her dad would have ever asked me to marry him. "You think it made him feel obliged to commit to you both?" asked Sara, careful not to sound too intrusive. She was good at that, subtle manipulation. "Not obliged, I hope, but I think it gave him a nudge in the right direction." "Well, she's beautiful. You're a very lucky woman." The woman's partner walked out of the bathroom and towards the table where the girls were sitting. "Well, I'll leave you to it," she said. "Enjoy your wine." Sara got up and walked behind the bar, looked back at the little girl asleep in a pram, then at the man who was now sat at the table seemingly happy and in love with his little family. Even that far from the table, Sara could still see the ring on the woman's finger, shining, sparkling. She wanted one, and she knew it. "Hey, Sara, how's it going?" asked Jason. Sara snapped out of her trance and saw her tenant and some stressed-out bald guy dressed in a suit. Me, the other side of the bar. I stood almost open-mouthed at how gorgeous this woman was. It was potent, in-your-face gorgeous. She ignored my blatant stare and checked her watch. You finished early, she said. Let out for good behaviour? Something like that, yeah. Listen, this is Jimbo. You got a minute? What do you want this time, Jason? Just a quick word, he said. Then he flashed that smile he uses like there's no tomorrow. It softened her up, impressively, like it did with a lot of women. Lucky bastard, I thought. My only defining talent is a receding hairline, and none of the women I'd met really digged that. Grab a table. I'll bring a couple of beers over if you like, she said before turning to me. Do you like beer, James? James, laughed Jason. Oh, and he prefers Jimbo, does he, Jason? She looked back at me. Her beauty made me nervous. You can call me James, or Jimbo, Jimmy, anything. I felt like Hugh Grant, waffling away. What an idiot. As me and Jason made our way to a table in the corner, Sara reminded him that he wasn't at home and beer in the bar wasn't free. It occurred to me that Jason had never brought me to Sara's bar before, but clearly he drank there fairly often as he had a running tab. Yeah, he called back to her. Just bring yourself with a couple of beers when you're ready. I sat down, facing the bar, and heard her say something under her breath. I wondered if these two were as good friends as Jason had led me to believe. In mind of the favour we were about to ask, I hoped that they were. She's gorgeous, Jace, I said. Jason leaned into the table and quietly told me to put my tongue back in my mouth, that I was likely to dribble all over her. And she's got a fella, he explained, and believe me, he's not one to cross, so keep your eyes and your hands to yourself. Anyway, he continued, if you're moving in, the last thing I need is to be caught in the middle of that shit. I can see the papers now. Jealous Moroccan boyfriend beats down girlfriend's butt on the side, English dude thrown off balcony. I didn't think that any respectable newspaper would print a story using phrases such as beats down, bit on the side, or English dude, but I got his point. He didn't want to be caught in the middle of some complicated love affair, which seemed highly unlikely to me anyway. Sara was hot, clearly had money, and was seeing some drug-dealing badass. I shouldn't think I'm her type, I said. So what are you boys talking about? Asked Sara, who appeared from nowhere over Jason's shoulder. Jason looked up at her and gave her another smile. We're actually just discussing living arrangements, he said. Okay. She put down 2 beers on the table and continued. So what do you want to speak to me about? Jason shrugged his shoulders, maintaining eye contact with her as he said, Same thing really. What do you mean, Jason? My mouth was dry, but I was too nervous to take a sip of the ice-cold beer that was just inches away from my fingers. Jimbo needs somewhere to live, and we have a spare room, he said. And you thought you'd offer out my spare room? I grabbed my beer and sunk a large gulp. Come on, Sara, he went on. It's a small room with a bed, and we don't use it. Listen, Sara, I cut in, much to Jason's annoyance going by the look on his face. I don't want to be a pain. She took a deep, almost measured breath, as if she were counting to 10 in her head. How desperate are you? She asked. He's desperate, added Jason. Apparently it was his turn to cut in, and he caught a glare from Sara for his troubles. Can he not speak for himself? You obviously haven't heard him on the phones at MacArthur's, he said. The joke at the expense of my failed sales career went over Sara's head. She looked back to me. Yes, I can, I said, with surprising confidence. Look, Sara, I walked out of my job today, and that means giving up my digs. I'm quiet and tidy. You won't even notice I'm there. So, if you have no job, how are you going to pay the rent? This is my apartment, not a dust house for bums. I've got money, enough to last a few months at least, and I'll find another job. I'll start looking tomorrow morning. Sara eyed me up and down. I wondered what she thought of me. Was the underweight, balding, jobless young man her type? Okay, but any fucking around from one of you, and you're both out. Understand? That's cool, I said. Alright, rock on, said Jason, picking up his beer and necking half of it in one go. He pulled out a €5 note from his pocket and pushed it into Sara's hand. Put that towards my tab, he said, knowing full well that it wouldn't even cover the beers we were currently drinking. Enjoy your drink, James, and Jason, can I have a word with you, please? Sara made her way behind the bar and Jason moved up to it and sat on the stool opposite her. I knew they were talking about me, but had faith, for some reason, that Sara was a woman of her word. She'd let Jason live with her, and now me when I needed it. She was nice, I had no reason to doubt that. You put me on the spot then, Jason, said Sara. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't really think, he said. So what's he like? He's cool, Sara, I swear. How do you know he isn't a thief or a pervert or some of the other scum you get around here, she asked. He backed me up to that work, stood up to that dick of a boss, Robbo, when no one else would even look him in the eye. He's safe, Sara, I'm telling you. Sara had just learnt a new piece of information. What happened with your boss? Have you walked out as well? Yeah, I had to. He was talking all sorts of shit, calling us worthless, stupid, fucking this and fucking that. I had to walk, he explained, as if we had no choice or sway on how things panned out back at the office. Anyway, you said you'd call your man at Tricky Beach Club about that bar job. You push your luck sometimes, Jason. I know, which he did, but this is the last time, I promise. Sara shook her head. I watched her body language and saw clearly that her tolerance of Jason was wearing thin. I'll call him later and let you know, she told him. Now go and get James settled at ours. I'll see you at home. But she picked up a cloth and started wiping down the bar. You're a legend, Sara. I don't know what I'd do without you. She didn't look up. Jason took the hint and walked towards the door. I took this as my sign to leave, dropped €10 on the table to cover the beer and followed him out.
Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thank you.